Question is from Nanny, who asks, love is the end of what?
Well, that's a good question. I quite like that title because it's a sort of a bit of a double meaning, I suppose, in that, you know, I think, you know, love is the end could mean that love is the thing that you aim for all the time in your life, you know, and you know, everyone does really. So you know, it has that sense to it, but at the same time, it's such a bittersweet thing that, you know, as soon as you bring that kind of depth of feeling into anything, it also destroys certain things, I suppose. So you know, yeah, it's a very bittersweet song. I guess the whole, you know, it's self-evident, and it's full of kind of emotional conflict. And I'm very proud of that one. I was thinking about it the other day. That I always feel like, because it's sort of right at the end of that album, and it's also so hard to play live. It's sort of I think we forget about that one sometimes. Yeah, it's one of my favourites.
Synthman asks, what is your favourite preamp and compressor in the studio?
Wow.
This is why everyone else goes to make a cup of tea at this point.
Yeah. That's a highly specialised question. My favourite preamp in the studio is probably no one is going to be interested in this apart from me, are they? Me and Synthman. Probably either a Neve 1073 or the API 512 or whatever they are. And compressor would be the Chandler TG1 stereo compressor, probably, which is based on the old Beatles compressor from Abbey Road.
Marvellous. Syrinx in China, who asks, what was the first album you bought yourself, and when was the last time you digged it out for a listen?
First album I bought was Disco by the Pet Shop Boys, which was their sort of remix album. In fact, it was the first. I don't know if there were many remix albums around at that point, but it was very cool. It had In the Night on it, and Panamera, and this long rambling remix of Suburbia, and yeah, it was great.
Have you listened to it recently?
I haven't listened to it for years and years, sadly. But in fact, I got it on cassette tape, so I'm not sure I've even got anything to play it on now.
Next question is from Lena8940, who's from Mexico, and she, or he, asks, will you write songs in Spanish in the future? You've done a bit of French.
I'm not too good on Spanish. I don't. Tom speaks very good Spanish.
Is it?
Yeah, but I did translate. Well, actually, I didn't really translate it, but I did a bit of work on a song by Juanes, which I guess was originally a song in Spanish, and they wanted to do an English version of it. Anyway, so they kind of sent me a rough translation, I think, and then I managed to just about make sense of it. As well, and so I did a kind of English language version of that. So that's kind of the opposite way around, which doesn't really answer the question.
Is that song seen the light of day?
I don't know. I don't know if it will ever see the light of day or not. It wasn't very long ago, so it might still be.
Wow, Juanes is a sort of a big South American pop star.
Yeah. It was a great song. It was. I think the song has been out in its original form. What was it called? No Regresas, it's called.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a great pop song.
Okay. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Keane could have something in Spanish. In there.
Well, yeah.
There's certainly a big appetite for it. I think it'd
be good. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel like our French language Black Burning Heart was a sort of unmitigated success. It was great fun to do, but it was we put a lot of work into it, and then people sort of didn't feel that Tom had kind of sung the French words in a strong enough accent or something, or that it wasn't understandable enough, or I don't know, which I just think is a load of crap. Really.
Well, the fans liked it. I liked it.
I liked it.
Yeah. This one is from Fiorella in Sao Paulo. It says that they're a great Keane fan and thinks you're a great composer and wants to know why you decided to do Mount Desolation. It seems to me that Keane is no more a priority for you.
Well, it was really just that we were on a break basically between tours. We'd kind of, towards the end of the Perfect Symmetry touring, Jesse and I were sort of talking a lot about doing this thing. It started off as a bit of a kind of joke idea, and we suddenly had all these songs that we'd written kind of on the road, and that was definitely specifically for Mount Desolation, or for this sort of unnamed country idea, and they obviously weren't right for Keane. So we just thought, well, between the Perfect Symmetry tour and the kind of Night Train stuff, we'd get in and record it very quickly, which is what we did. And that only took about less than a month, and then the touring took less than 2 months. So it was really didn't take that much out of my own sort of personal time or my kind of writing time for Keane or whatever. And it was so it didn't really impact on Keane very much at all. But it was, for me and Jesse, it was something that we really wanted to do, and I think I really wanted to try writing in a different style, and also to, get in a transit van and drive around playing tiny gigs, which is difficult to do with Keane. So it fulfilled a lot of things that made me happy.
Yeah, but it was never a question of it being an end to Keane. It was always just a little.
No, it was never. It was always just a kind of a different thing, I suppose. I don't, I never want to sort of write it off as just a bit of fun, because it was something that we cared about a lot and put a lot of work into. And I'm really proud of the songs that both of us wrote for it. But it, we were always very aware of the impact it would have on Keane and trying to minimise that. And I can remember sitting down with Jesse when we were in America on doing the Night Train tour and saying, well, we were kind of planning our touring for Mount Desolation. Suddenly it was sort of starting to look like it had gone from kind of being 6 weeks to being 4 months or something, and we kind of said, well, let's just stop after. Let's do 3 weeks in the UK and 3 weeks in America, and then just stop and put it to bed, and sort of get back. We were both very excited about getting back to the Keane stuff, and we wanted to have a kind of clear cut-off point. So it was, it was never a question of not being excited about Keane or Keane not being a priority. Keane was very much the priority all along, but I think you can have a priority and still do something that isn't your priority. There's a sentence and a half.
Travelfish says they hear a lot of America in Mount Desolation songs, but have your travels through the US ever inspired a Keane song?
That's a good question. Yeah, they must have done. I'm just trying to think when and where. I think, well, there are certainly songs that haven't been released that were inspired by America. I guess, songs like Perfect Symmetry have a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. But that's, I guess Perfect Symmetry is my attempt at talking about the kind of sort of self-righteous hypocrisy that is, you know, is rife in Britain, and I think very much in America as well. You know, obviously that's a massive generalisation, but there's a sort of culturally or as a society, do you feel that there's sometimes that Britain and America share this sort of very kind of pious view of ourselves, where we seem to sort of tacitly think that we're better than everyone else, and you know, we're basically pretty much right about everything, and that everyone else in the world should, you know, look, you know, see how we do things and learn from it, but at the same time, you know, we have some utterly kind of shameful, institutionalised approaches to humanity and you know, the way we do things. So yeah, so I think that's something that I don't know. I hate to kind of, obviously I don't feel that about American, you know, people as a whole, but there's something in our societies, I think, that I definitely felt more and more, you know, in the last few years, probably, and that's probably inspired by travelling around a bit.
Makes sense. This is from Laurie L in Argentina, who asks what the best present you got from a Keane fan is.
Well, I think my personal favourite is a little box thing. I'm going to go and get it in a minute because it's next door. Okay. But it's one of those Mexican, I don't know, I'm sure they have a specific name which I don't know, but it's like a little display cabinet, and this one is it has a little sort of model of each of us in it playing instruments, and you know, they're very small. It's very kind of what would we say? I guess, you know, it's quite gaudy in appearance, if that's not too you know, I don't mean that as an insult, but it's also very macabre. And there's this venue, I think it's at the National Arena, I think, in Mexico City, which has a whole kind of wall of this stuff, massive display of this very kind of macabre, very bright, colourful, kind of glitzy models and, you know, decorations, and you see them all over the place. I'm sure they have. It's obviously some sort of traditional thing, but it's they're amazing. I'm going to go get it right now.
Okay. Hold the fort, everyone.
I've always wanted to say that how much I love it. I've never had a chance. There you go. We'll have to do a bit of time lapse there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's way cool. Let's zoom in on it.
You can see we've all got our sort of Perfect Symmetry tour gear on.
That's great.
And we've got sort of Death's head skulls for heads. But I love that.
And that was just given to you by a fan after a gig?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say I can't even remember who gave it to us, but it's brilliant. I absolutely love it.
Simple Heart Girl in Chicago says the first gig she ever went to as a teenager was Rice-Oxley, and asks what the first concert you went to, how old you were, and did it change your life?
The first proper gig I went to was U2 at Wembley Stadium, which is a nice small one to start with. But we didn't have a venue near us when we were growing up. I guess Brighton was relatively close, but London was nearly as close. So so you kind of had to go out there. And I remember it just wasn't one of those things that was kind of part of growing up for me at all. And I remember being on holiday in France with Richard, and had a copy of Vox magazine when that used to exist, and it had this great review Zooropa in it, and a review of the Zoo TV tour, and I was like, I've got to go and see that. And anyway, so we managed to get tickets and go and see it. It was amazing.
Yeah,
it's still the best concert tour I think there's ever been.
Yeah. This question is from Hussond, quite a deep one. She says, while your songs sometimes express a cynical view of religion/faith, they also suggest a longing for something beyond the physical realm. Would you say you believe that people have souls, or in the existence of a spiritual world?
That is a deep question, isn't it? Yeah. How long have we got? Yeah, where to start? I guess I believe in what I believe in is human beings, basically, and I think the human heart and mind are amazing, amazing things that sort of can do such amazingly sort of powerful things, do so much good and do so much evil, and so much in between. I don't really feel a need to look, to try and conjure something up beyond that. But I have so much interest in people and so much belief in people that I guess the idea, that to me is not a limiting thing. I don't think, isn't it depressing that if we're just people and we just live for our sort of 70 years and then rot in the ground or whatever. I think that's an amazing miracle in its own right. What I'm cynical about is, I think, hard to argue with, which is, like a song like Perfect Symmetry is, people seem to sometimes take as being a sort of a negative song about religion, whereas really it's about people using religion to enable them to do harm to other people, which is undeniably very, well, relatively common. It depends what you call very common, but it's something that's happened repeatedly over and over again for hundreds of years, probably thousands of years. To me, I don't see how anyone can say that that's a good thing. It doesn't mean that anyone who's religious is bad, but I think all religions, I think, were founded on the basis of goodness and love and belief in doing good things, while you're on this planet, and the fact that they're sometimes perverted to enable people to achieve other means which are far from good is obviously, but to me, is certainly a terrible thing.
This next question is from Gabs, who says that sad news to learn that the Crypt in Hastings is closing down for good after 30 years as a music venue, and asks if you have any memories of Keane's early gigs. I think you played 2 gigs there in 2000.
I think we did, yeah. I didn't know it was closing. That is sad. My main recollection of it is it being very empty when we were there. I can certainly remember my mum being there and Tom's mum being there, but it was, I think both of our gigs there would have been pretty sparsely attended, although I might be blending 2 into 1.
I think you got a review from The Fly in one of them.
Did we? Oh, that's good.
One of the earliest Keane live reviews. Mm. On the website, somebody's uploaded it to the website.
Wow.
And I think you played with Spearmint at one of them. Remember Spearmint?
Oh. Did they have that song about an astronaut.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Anyway, yeah, I remember the whole room was, because it was in a cellar, obviously. It was there were these sort of pillars everywhere, so you couldn't really kind of ever quite get comfortable on stage, and half the audience couldn't see the band. Although that wasn't really a problem when we played there, because there were only about 5 people actually there. But yeah, it was it's really sad that, because I think you know, those kind of local venues are often the best ones. Like even now, I much prefer going to see bands either in a really small venue, which you know, it's not always easy, or going to see them in London. I mean, or you know, going to see them at a smaller venue outside of London. Because sometimes bands who are playing quite big places in London will still play pretty small places sort of out in the provinces. So it's, you know, I quite happily, like, I remember driving to Bath to see Coldplay many years ago, sometime between their first and second albums, and you know, it took like 5 hours to get there and 5 hours to get back or something. But Tom and I went over there, and it's, you know, I'd rather do that than go and see a band in Wembley Arena or whatever, because it's an adventure, and you get that much closer to the band, and those places have so much more character, I think. So yeah, it's a shame.
The next question is from Sujash, who asks, who is your absolute favourite novelist and poet? What are the 2 names that spring to mind?
I think I'd say William Boyd is my favourite novelist, I think. And I am not an expert in poetry by any means. I think Philip Larkin was pretty amazing. We'll go for those 2.
Sounds good. Next question is from Kristin from Worcester in Massachusetts, who says that she thinks the song you co-wrote for Kylie Minogue is amazing and also very Keane-esque. Would you and the band consider performing it in the way that you obviously did Early Winter? Would you consider performing Everything is Beautiful?
I don't know. Is it that Keane-esque?
I suppose it would be if you played it.
If you're very Keane-esque, we played it, yeah. I don't know, maybe. I feel like Early Winter was more Keane-esque. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I got a feeling we probably won't.
Okay. Was it a good experience working with Kylie?
It was brilliant working with Kylie, yeah. She was absolutely lovely and a really good singer, contrary to what everyone always says about her. But yeah, great fun. It was me and her and Fraser T. Smith, who's a pretty great producer and writer, and Stuart Price, who's kind of seems to be producing all the hit albums at the moment, in a room. So it's amazing. Yeah.
Wow. Next question is from Infotope, who asks, do you play the piano often aside from the times you rehearse or compose? If so, what do you choose to play on those occasions?
I probably most often play the piano in the pub, possibly after a few beers, but I love playing just for fun, I suppose, and having, you know, when you've got a little gang of people around a piano and singing songs, I think is just for me, is one of the great feelings.
What kind of thing would you play?
Well, you normally start with the Beatles. I think you got to find the common ground that everyone knows, and so the Beatles is a good starting point. Paul Simon. I'd normally chuck in a couple of Springsteen favourites of mine. And then, yeah, I don't know, what else is good? It's that sort of thing. I mean, I love playing kind of the old classics from like the 40s and 50s as well, stuff like Irving Berlin and, you know, White Christmas, or, you know, The Way You Look Tonight.
Oh wow.
all that sort of stuff. And love playing those. That was such an amazing era of songwriting, and it's amazing how many people know those songs, even sort of 70 years later, which is a testament to how amazing those songs are. It kind of always makes me think that's quite a benchmark to aspire
to. Next question is from PointGuard022, also known as Mia, and she asks, have you ever written the lyrics or music for a song while you were dreaming?
Yeah, I have. But it's I've never really had a kind of yesterday moment where I've woken up and discovered that I've just written one of the greatest songs of all time. Still crossing my fingers, but yeah, I find the problem is it's very hard to remember them, especially if it's the middle of the night. But and also the other thing is that sometimes you're having a dream and you're dreaming about this song and think this is the best song that's ever been written, and then you wake up and it's just awful, like really childishly simple drivel. So I think your mind can play tricks on you in that respect. But I remember when I was writing songs for Perfect Symmetry, a lot of that I'd sort of go to bed and then keep having ideas just as I was drifting off to sleep, and then keep having to get up and sort of go record the little thing, sort of demo or whatever, before I went to sleep. And a lot of those ideas, were things that ended up on the album.
Mimi in Arizona asks, what do you do to feel better when you're feeling low?
I think writing a good song is one of the things that makes me happiest. Although that's you can never know that you're going to write a good song. So if you're feeling low and I go and try and write a song and can't write a decent note, then that probably just makes me feel even worse. But I think I like being outdoors. I like sort of walking and being up on the hills on my own, and I also really like just sitting around with friends, kind of drinking a beer and putting the world to rights. Basically, that's kind of my absolute favourite thing to do. So if I can, I think I'm quite a sociable creature, so I quite like to be around people. So if that always makes you forget your troubles, I think.
Vali Dominescu from Romania asks, big question this one, you've got this first thing that comes into your head. Which Keane song is your favourite?
You haven't told me anything.
Okay. Any particular reason?
I think lots of reasons. I think I'm really proud of the lyrics for it. I think it's very original and unusual as a song. Quite unusual for Keane as well. And I also love I think it's quite an original topic, actually. And it's got a lot of kind of spirit to it, a lot of bite. But I also love the sound of the track as well. I think it's quite it's a really unusual sort of rhythm and lots of unusual synth sounds, but it's also quite sparse. And so yeah, I'm really it's it's not, it wasn't a single or anything obviously, but just whenever that track comes on, I think, wow, did we really do this? Seems hard to believe, but yeah, very proud of that one.
Next question is from Fody, who says, you're all self-confessed fans of the In-Betweeners. There's 4 of them, 4 of you. If you had to assign each member of Keane to an In-Betweener, who would be who?
Well, it's funny that you should ask, because we've been having that same conversation ourselves in the last few days. We've decided, we started off because we thought that Tom was getting increasingly like Jay, with his general sort of combination of chavvy sports casual wear and incredibly crude humour. And then obviously the other boys decided that I was like Will, which I think is a cheap shot, but probably true. And Jesse decided he wanted to be Simon, which, you know, I'm not sure about. I'm not sure he's got the sensitivity of Simon. I don't know. And that really just leaves Neil. Every time we say that Richard's like Neil, he always says, well, I can't do the robot. I think he's worried that we're going to sort of stage some sort of in-betweeners reenaction, and we're going to force him to do some crazy dancing in a Nissan hut in a caravan club or whatever.
Exactly. It's always good to know that the members of Keane have the same questions as the fans. What, asks Madalinas, is the worst regret you have had since being in Keane?
Oh, there's so many. Well, let me think. There are two that spring to mind. Firstly, that this is quite a silly one actually, I don't regret it that much, but it always plays on my mind a bit, which was when we first met the guys from the Flaming Lips. They said, oh, you know, why don't you come up on stage and wear furry animal costumes and stuff, and for some reason, I think it was in the sort of, we were on one of our tours just before we sort of imploded back in 2006, and we were just, I was in such a bad mood. I didn't want to dress up as a huge squirrel, so although probably would have been quite good. But anyway, so I always regret doing that. And the one that really, I think I'm never gonna quite get over is that the BBC were making this album when I think we were making Perfect Symmetry. It was around that time, and they were kind of reenacting the making of Sergeant Pepper, and they got all these bands in, and I don't think it was that good in the end, but they'd asked U2 to do a day in the life, and U2 wanted to do it with us. We were going to collaborate on a day in the life, but the only way we could make it happen was to, basically we were just about to fly off to Argentina, I think, or something like that, and we just couldn't quite get in the same place at the same time. And we were sort of talking about flying back from South America to do it, or so, you know, all this sort of stuff. We just couldn't make it work, but that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
So I've always felt a bit sad about that.
I can imagine. Yeah. Wow. Oh well. Maybe another time.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be loads of opportunities.
Exactly. Joanne would like to know if you've given the studio in which we sit a name yet. She says that Richard refers to it as Tim's studio, but obviously you've had the barn before. Does it have a name of any sort?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Well, you don't have to put it in the sleeve notes for your album. What are you
We
going to
were,
say?
well, in Mount Desolation we just put Tim's house, because that was like, I couldn't think of anything. But the problem is that I started jokingly referring to it as the shit factory, and unfortunately everyone calls it that now. So I'm desperately trying to think of something better, but I can't. I wanted to think of something that's sort of local and has some kind of resonance, but it's just so difficult to not come up with something really, really cheesy. Like, you know, you sort of end up, you can go like the Supernova Heights Road and sort of call it after one of our hits or something, but I think that would just be dire. But anyway, yeah, I'm working on it.
Halvaz asks, have you ever looked at an old picture of yourself and thought, what the bleep was I thinking?
Oh yes, absolutely. Where to begin? We have one of the things we do when we're on tour is we'll sort of I think all of us keep an eye on the thing you do where you kind of post all the fans' photos from various gigs and stuff, and just try to keep an eye on what's going on generally on the website. But if anyone comes across a photo where one of us looks really terrible, we're guaranteed to send it around and have a good laugh at each other. But there are some, because obviously if someone's a photographer for a magazine or something, they sort of shoot off 10,000 photos and they'll choose the one where everyone looks great, hopefully. But with the fans, there's no, they're sort of going on the website or whatever, and there's no need to sort of edit them down. So you just get, there's lots of amazing photos, but you also get, there was one of me from, I think it was from the festival we did in Switzerland last summer, or no, a year before must have been, and I don't know, it just looks so awful. But they're always, I think all of us have been captured in terrible modes. But the one that was an official photo was the front cover of an American thing, which I think is called Keyboard magazine, and it was a sort of composite of each of us. It's like me sort of trying to play the piano whilst also standing up and looking at the camera, and looking just sort of awkward. And then there's Tom's doing this thing where he's kind of holding the mic and pretending to sing, and he's sort of doing this weird thing with his arm. It's like sort of action shot, and we still regularly sort of make fun of him, poor fella. But he sort of, Jesse will quite regularly just sort of, he'll be walking to the room and Jesse will be standing there going like this, doing a horrible impression. It's terrible. It's a very cruel environment.
Gina83 asks, if you had tons of free time, tons in capital letters, what would you do? How would you use, if you had an absolute load of free time?
I'd like to learn to be a joiner, and I'd also like to do more travelling, particularly in America. I love driving around America, but I've done a couple of road trips which are kind of 3 weeks long each, and you can cover quite a lot of distance in that time. But I would literally, if I had like a year, I would probably just go to America and drive around for a year and try and go to as many places as I could, especially small towns and obviously all the kind of the great music places, and that's what I would do.
CP George asks, what set of circumstances and or mind frame is most conducive to creative endeavour?
Well, depends who you are. I think confidence is very important, which I sort of, it definitely comes and goes with me. Some people sort of have a lot of it or create it through the means of drugs.
Well, that doesn't tend to lead to good stuff, does it?
Not very often.
Overconfidence is
not very often. Getting the balance of confidence and also self-awareness is probably quite a hard one to strike. But I think a sense of confidence and a willingness to be brave definitely leads to really good things. But as for a particular mindset, I don't know. I think that's a really really tough one. I think I actually write better songs when I'm happy, basically. Because you can imagine that people like me who tend to write quite sort of emotional songs might sort of find that all the good stuff comes when you're really sad and sort of feeling all, you know, mooning around, feeling sorry for yourself or whatever. But I don't really, you know, I take so much pleasure in writing songs that I feel I really, you know, really touch something, you know, in myself, and then feel that's going to reach out to other people. That I, you know, somehow I think when I'm the pain and the pleasure go hand in hand.
Il Poco asks, what is the next Keane album going to be like if you compare it to the earlier albums?
Well, it's early days, but I think I feel like I'm working very hard on the songwriting, the quality of the songwriting, and was just start pushing myself much harder than I have before to really distinguish between kind of brilliant and mediocre, and also, I guess, I really want to be able to communicate with people directly, in a way that I feel that perfect symmetry is hard to crack for some people unless you sort of sit down and kind of listen to a song 50 times and sort of work your way through all the lyrics and the slightly complicated rationale of some of the songs. It's I want to try and have, I guess, even more soul and passion, but in a way, I think you have to work even harder as a songwriter to put those things in a way that people get immediately. You know, it's less self-indulgent to do things that way, but it's one of the hardest things to do in songwriting. That's why the great pop songs are great pop songs, because they speak to people, you know, on first listen.
You have an idea of how it would be sonically? Do you think it's going to be more like one of the other albums than another one?
I think it's probably closer to Under the Iron Sea, maybe, at the moment. Just thinking about what we've done so far. Yeah, I guess I think it's a bit of it sounds like a terrible cop-out actually, but I think there are elements of all three albums, as you'd expect, I suppose. But I think Under the Iron Sea had a very good balance of that really strong emotional core, but also some amazing soundscapes and a lot of kind of energy peaks, and also some very sort of really intimate moments like Hamburg Song and Try Again. And so I think, just based on the kind of songs that I've been writing and the kind of stuff that we're coming up with when we're playing, I think it's going to be that sort of thing. But it's quite I hope it's going to be a really beautiful sounding record and have that. One of the things I loved about Perfect Symmetry was songs like Spiraling that had a massive amount of energy. So I hope we'll have some of that.
Flesh asks, where's the strangest place that inspiration has come to you to write a song?
Strangest place that inspiration has come to me? I don't know. I find aeroplanes often lead to ideas I think I tend to feel quite emotional in aeroplanes. I think that's quite a common thing I've read. I don't know if that's, you know, a chemical thing to do with it, or, you know, physical thing to do with the lack of oxygen or something like that, or whatever else they pump through the air conditioning. But so I tend to write a lot of lyrics on planes, and can get quite a lot of stuff done sometimes. It's quite good, especially on long journeys. But it also, it's quite difficult if you find that you've got an idea for a song. It's quite hard to kind of make a note of it when you're on a plane. I feel like I find myself sort of creeping afterwards to the toilet with a kind of tape recorder, and I'm trying to, while everyone else is asleep, trying to sort of sing into this thing without disturbing anyone. But it's an odd. It does come at strange times.
Dree says, you seem like a very rational thinker. Is there anything that you're superstitious about, or have you had any kind of weird, supernaturally kind of experiences? Actually, that's Adriana from Mexico.
I don't think I've had any supernatural experiences. But I mean, I'm just as partial to irrational thought as the next person, probably. I find I'm quite easily spooked. I don't really like sort of being in the house on my own, or like, yeah, I feel like, particularly when I was a kid, or even until quite recently, probably, I'd sort of always feel that if I went downstairs in the middle of the night that someone was sort of watching me or something. So yeah, that's fairly irrational. I've always been very susceptible to like horror films and stuff. I just can't watch them, but I just find I'm completely terrified of every shadow for sort of months afterwards. But I don't know about superstition. I don't think I'm that superstitious, really.
The next question is from Jess Denverco, or Denver, Colorado, I guess, who has asked, have you ever thought about composing a musical score for a movie, or have you ever been approached to do so?
I don't know if we've ever been asked to do a whole score. Have I been asked to do the whole thing? No, I don't think so. I'd love to. I think it's really a fine art doing scores for movies. I tried once with Ed Rowe, who directed that film Strangers that we did. Did a little piece that he asked me to write some music for, and the stuff I did was just so rubbish. It didn't work at all. So I've sort of been a bit scared ever since. But no, I'd love to do that.
Next question is from Louisa, and she asks, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. That's not the main question. The question is, would you like to have one of Keane's songs sung by the Glee TV show, and if so, which one? Do you watch Glee?
No.
No? Any Keane song you feel would lend itself well to a choir of young, smiley teenagers? Everybody's Changing obviously worked well for the PS22 chorus.
Yeah, that was great. I think something like My Shadow would be nice, wouldn't it? Something kind of full of togetherness.
Exactly. Next question is from Jax, who says that they seem to remember from somewhere that you once said Atlantic was composed from parts of two separate songs. Is that true?
Yes.
They ask, anyway, I wondered if that has been the case with other Keane songs. Is this a common thing?
It's quite hard to do that because I quite often try to, because I have all these ideas that are like stragglers hanging around, and I've got a verse that I love and a bridge that I love, and and a chorus that I love, but putting them together so often doesn't work because the tempo is not right, or the key, you can't get the keys to match up. It's sort of either one of them low, too low or too high, and you can't get them to match. And but the one, I think Spiralling might possibly have been two separate songs. Perfect Symmetry might well have been, given the the nature of it, sort of having all those different sections in the middle. I'm not sure. I quite often find that I'll have an idea for a song that then goes in lots of different directions. I write lots of bits for it and then edit them together. But yeah, that's a good question. I find it hard to do.
Becca says, as someone who's interested in music and songwriting, I was wondering if there's a specific process that you go through to get an idea down.
To get an idea down? I wonder what that means. In terms of, well, I guess the actual writing part of it, I tend to either think of ideas as I'm just sort of going about my day, and I find myself singing something, and occasionally get something that feels good enough to actually maybe run over to make a note of, and if or I'll sit at the piano for ages and kind of keep pushing myself for hours and hours until something good comes out, hopefully. But then when it comes to actually sort of making that into something audible or recordable, I always record all the demos just on a dictaphone, the cassette tape to start with. So I always have that on my piano or wherever I am in my bag. And then I'll so I know that I've got it. And then once I've got something that I really feel is like a complete song or near enough, then I'll start a demo on my laptop normally, or if I'm at home here in the studio. Do
you have all your cassette tapes of all your dictaphone moments?
I do.
Wow. You don't record it, so you start a new tape. You don't record
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Wow.
I've got all of them back to sort of 2002 or something.
Oh really? Wow. Next question is from Jaron in Seattle, who asks, what is the shortest amount of time it took to write a song, and what song was it?
That's a very good question. I think in terms of a complete song, it probably would have been something off the first album, because ever since then I haven't had time to kind of... So it always feels like I've been sort of trying to write between gigs or tours or whatever, and also probably spend more time working on the lyrics in the later albums. But I think Somewhere in You was pretty quick. In fact, I think all of those ones were pretty quick, actually.
What's quick? Like days? Or
no, probably quicker than that, generally. I think... I'm pretty sure that Somebody and Everybody's Changing were both pretty fast. I mean, it's very hard to tell, because I'll work on an idea for a couple of hours or less, get it down 10 minutes, and then go back to it the next day, and then the next day, and or maybe the lyrics will take a week to sort of for something to slot into place. But it's not like I'll be sitting there for weeks on end, sort of only working on that song and never eating. But yeah, it's... I find generally, on average, it can certainly take, days, weeks, months, really, to bring a song from starting it to actually finishing it. And so just sort of dipping in and out of it. And I've got songs that have been around for years that I still kind of cling on to with the hope of finding just one day the perfect lyrical phrase is going to slot into it. But yeah.
Drahouse asks, what is your favourite food?
Vanilla ice cream and chocolate sauce.
Very nice. Homemade chocolate sauce.
Has to be homemade chocolate sauce. Yeah.
Tracy from Texas asks, when you write a song or lyrics for Keane, do you have Tom's voice in your head or your own?
I think Tom's really. With lyrics, I definitely write very, very much from the heart and try and. I'm not very good at kind of telling stories or writing about things that I think people will want to hear about. It's, you know, I have to try and do something that feels very, you know, potent to me in some way. So yeah, I definitely try and dig that out somewhere. But then, you know, from that point onwards, I definitely hear Tom's voice, and I guess I also really try and have the great benefit of having known Tom for so long, and you know, I feel that I probably am instinctively also trying to write. When I write stuff that I feel is important to me, I think I instinctively kind of am writing stuff that I feel is important to both of us, or even all of us as a band, because I think, you know, we spend so much time together and so much time talking about the world and just, you know, lightheartedly or more seriously or whatever, and I think you kind of develop, you know, over such a long friendship, you develop a kind of a worldview, which, you know, we all have different opinions on things, but I feel that my role is to try and represent that in the kind of raw song.
Hai from South Korea says, when you're playing piano you look very passionate and it seems a little dangerous. Have you ever injured yourself during a performance?
Yeah, only minor injuries generally. I cut my fingers quite frequently, which can be quite dramatic because of the white piano keyboards. So we sort of, you know, you can cut. They can be quite sharp on the edge, or if you've got a broken key, and you sort of catch it, and then there's sort of blood all over the keyboard, which looks very gory, and there's a tiny little cut. But I did a good one. I got through the whole of the Perfect Symmetry tour without sustaining any injuries at all, I don't think. And then the very last gig, in fact, I think it was the second last song, we were playing Under Pressure in Spain, and I was sort of rocking out, and I misjudged the mic stand and just completely headbutted my mic stand, and was sort of almost kind of blacked out for a minute and didn't know sort of what I'd done because I had my eyes shut, and I suddenly sort of felt this massive thud in the middle of my face. So that was slightly uncomfortable for a few days.
Sherry W. from Michigan in the USA asks how it felt doing your own roadie work on the Mount Desolation tour.
It's great. I loved it. I mean, I don't really... even though it's great to be in such a luxurious position that we have lots of people working with us when we're on the road, I do feel I have a sort of instinctive reaction against kind of mollycoddling, and I certainly don't have a problem with setting up my own gear and carrying stuff. I quite enjoy it really. In a way, I feel more comfortable doing things that way. Yeah, but no, it was great. I enjoyed it. Of course, it's very simple when you're only playing tiny venues and you just got a piano and a microphone set up. It's not quite the same as setting up a massive lighting rig or something. Probably best not to unleash me on that.
Yeah. Driver PC says that you said your best website of 2010 was YouTube. Do you ever look at covers of your songs on there uploaded by fans? Do you ever check out other versions of Keane songs and that sort of thing on there?
My favourite one I do check them out. I saw a lovely version of, actually it was a Mount Desolation song. I think, was that a video or was it an audio thing? I don't know. Anyway, Mark McDonald, who has his own Keane gear site, done a lovely version of the Mount Desolation song. But my favourite Keane one ever was by a group of, I think they were Swedish girls, obviously. But they were, I can't remember what song, I think they'd done a couple of songs, and it was all like lovely harmonies and stuff. It was brilliant. I can't remember if it was posted on KeaneMusic.com or if it was just something that sort of was sent around. But yeah, that was fantastic. But it's amazing how many people do that, and I sort of, I guess I did my little cover These Days, for example, and the pleasure you get from recording a cover like that, I think it's great. I really sort of empathise with it, I suppose. You know?
Well, feel free to do more. We rather liked it. Brian55 asks, which radio station do you listen to at breakfast?
I don't listen to the radio at breakfast. My daughter listens to Destiny's Child over and over again. She calls them the Fairy Band. And she likes listening to Bootylicious, even though she's only 3, so there's a lot of independent women. What's that album? Survivor, is it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we listen to that album quite a lot. But yeah, I listen to the radio in the car. I listen to Radio 1, basically.
Molly Rick asks, what is your favourite Keane lyric? And which one is the most meaningful to you? So maybe 2 different lyrics.
I think, I mean, they're all meaningful to me. I think the lyrics to Hamburg song I really love, from a sort of emotional point of view. I find them very, still find them quite sort of heart-wrenching. The one I love is the when we fall in love, we're just falling in love with ourselves, which is the only thing I don't like about it is it's a bit of a bleak outlook on that sort of characteristic of humanity, but I think there's a lot of truth in it. But you know, you could write a book about that subject. But yeah, but there are lots of lyrics that I'm proud of, and I guess I'm proud also of the fact that I've actually written some lyrics that I'm proud of, if that makes any sense. I'm glad that because I put so much effort into the lyrics, and I don't find it easy at all. And I'm glad that there are lots of good ones and not too many stinkers.
Another kind of first thing that pops into your head question. Loriana asks, what is the place you love most in the world?
I have no idea. Actually, somewhere that I really love is Bexhill Seafront, which is a very quiet little place. But yeah, I don't know why I love it so much, but I do.
Annie in New York says, Tim, do you ever take real time off and just relax?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I guess it's, you know, Probably not, but that's it's the nature of being in a band, isn't it? Or certainly being a songwriter is you're always thinking and always working on songs, and I don't think of it as being work really, but it makes it hard to completely relax. I don't think I could ever sit down and think, great, I've cleared my in tray and I've got nothing to do this weekend, because I think there's always something to do. But then I think it's almost assumed that if you're in a band, you ought really to be able to spend most of your time sort of sitting by the pool, drinking a martini, and I don't know. It's no, I don't know. Do most people get lots of time off? Probably not.
No, not really.
Don't think so. So yeah, probably just the same as everyone else, really.
Petra from Holland would like to know how you felt when you saw Tom performing with Keane. Were you proud or jealous or anything else?
With Queen?
With Queen, yes. I say with Keane.
With Keane, yeah.
You've never seen him perform.
Yeah, it was good to see him perform with Keane. He keeps turning up night after night.
How did you feel seeing him perform with Brian May, Roger Taylor, Queen?
I thought it was amazing. It actually brought a tear to my eye. I felt so sort of... well, firstly, I felt very proud of him, as proud for him, I suppose, because I thought it was just an amazing performance. Really, it's nice. I mean, I don't think that we take his abilities for granted, but of course you get used to it. We play together all the time, we rehearse together, do gigs and hang out, so you sort of... I'm used to hearing him sing Somebody We Know and Is It Any Wonder, but it's only when you hear his voice taken out of context, those Queen songs are probably even more demanding on the voice. I definitely felt like, wow, that is pretty phenomenal, and I doubt there's anyone else in any pop band in the world that could have done that job as well as he did. So yeah, and also just because of knowing how much of a Queen fan he is and has been. We used to, when we were 10 years old, we used to spend sort of summer afternoons when it was lovely sunny outside, sort of shut the curtains and watch Queen's greatest hits on video, volumes 1 and 2, and yeah, so it is. That's one of those sort of really miraculous things where you go from being a 10-year-old boy sort of pretending to be Freddie Mercury and being excited about having a microphone and prancing around and singing, it's a kind of magic, and then whatever 20 years later he's sort of actually on stage. It's just absolutely mental, isn't it?
Did you go on? Did you get to go to the Albert Hall?
I didn't go, no, but I watched it the next day on some very dodgy YouTube footage or whatever. It was, you could just tell it was...
Even on the dodgy YouTube, you could tell, even from a camera filmed at the top of the balcony.
Yeah, well, people were saying that, the whole thing was pretty, as you would expect, given the nature of it. It was a pretty kind of restrained affair, and, it was quite... There wasn't, lots of sort of pretty kind of veteran rockers doing their thing, or more restrained people, and it felt like the whole thing suddenly sort of caught fire as soon as Tom went out, and I think it just shows what a great frontman he is.
Georgina rather, from Mexico, says that she loves Bed Shaped but doesn't understand it. Please, could you explain what the song is about? I don't know how much you like to explain your songs, but could you give even an inkling of what Bed Shaped is about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm terrible at explaining lyrics, and I should just sort of refuse to, but it's so nice that people are interested. It's really just about being in love, I suppose, when you're young and then drifting apart. I'm sure it's definitely part of growing up in a small town where it's one of those towns that people tend to leave, and the people, friends and girlfriends that I had when I was younger, you know, everyone sort of drifted off to go up to London or travel the world and do whatever they were going to do. And I guess it was about the hope or believing that, you know, eventually we'd sort of somehow all be brought back together. You know, when we're too old to be out sort of seeking our fortune or whatever.
So, and what is shaped like a bed? Like, I know it's a very, very
well,
basic...
that was the bed shape thing is really just I guess about being old, and that was a word that I thought was a commonly used word, because it was a phrase, a word that my mum used to use a lot. And she was a doctor, well, she still is a doctor actually, but she would talk about hospital patients becoming bed shaped. It's quite a common problem. So they'd spend the whole time just lying in bed, and you gradually sort of lose the ability to flex or whatever, you know, because you're just lying still the whole time. It's, you know, and it's a big problem. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting image.
Well done, Georgina, for that question. I had no idea of that. Amethyst, or Sarah, asks if you could borrow the TARDIS, rather, where, or Doctor Who's TARDIS this is, where or when would you visit?
Not one of the other TARDIS.
No, some people may not know what the TARDIS is. But Doctor Who's TARDIS specifically, where or when would you visit?
Model. What can you do with the TARDIS? You can go where?
I think you can go back in time, or travel. I mean, you could just go to London. It would seem a bit of a waste.
Yeah. Oh wow! What would I do? I'd quite. I mean, there are so many things, aren't there? But in a sort of Keane context, I'd love to go back to the kind of hopes and fears period and have a bit more of a grasp of what was happening to us, and I think if we could have enjoyed that period a lot more and had a lot more fun, and sort of simultaneously prevented ourselves from having the sort of slight problems that followed that. But you know, it's just one of these, like so many things in life, it just sort of whizzed by, and this you never didn't think that initial rush was either going to end or was going to lead to anything bad. But so yeah, that was a very interesting time that would be quite cool to be able to revisit and with a slightly more level head.
Next question is from she's from Brazil. I think it's Simonina. I'm not totally sure. Apologies, Simonina. My question is, if you happen to have a new inspiration for a good lyric, how do you choose if it would be used for Keane or Mount Desolation? Was there an overlapping period where you were writing for both, or was it you just had a Mount Desolation period?
No, I had a sort of just a quick rush of Mount Desolation writing. Really, I think I suddenly got into a kind of Mount Desolation headspace and didn't really know. The Mount Desolation concept was very, well, firstly very simple, but also very kind of it potentially kind of threw its net quite wide. Like really anything that it started off being very kind of, let's write loads of country songs about, you know, Highway 61 and whatever, but then it eventually sort of came to include just about anything that was quite kind of folky or soulful or countryish, I suppose. But they were, my initial sort of rush of writing was, already had one song that was very country, which didn't make the album eventually, and then Departure and The Midnight Ghost, and I think the only one that would have been a Keane contender was Bitter Pill, but the others were very specifically kind of like Bridal Gown was definitely written in that sort of rush of Mount Desolation stuff. But then, you know, at the time we were still I think we were still touring Perfect Symmetry, so yeah, we were still touring Perfect Symmetry, so it felt like we'd become that sort of band. And really now, we didn't know where we were going to go musically at Keane, and now it seems like something like Bridal Gown, or especially like Coming Home, I think would have fitted really nicely into a Keane album, but it didn't seem like that at the time. So yeah, but I don't know. I think Man Desolation gave us the license to be not to worry too much about whether stuff was a little bit traditional, or you know, I think with Keane we'd probably try it a bit harder to be original, for example, and I don't think originality is a prerequisite of pop music, but it's something that we've always prized fairly highly in Keane, and I don't think with the more traditional styles like country and folk, I think there's a bit more, it tends to embrace a sort of traditional concepts a bit more.
Stephanie Skies says she has been to your North American concerts and enjoyed listening to your performance of Your Love. Will you be singing on the next Keane album?
I'll certainly be singing, but it's a question of whether it's just backing vocals. I don't know. I've got a feeling I probably won't be. But
after that Queen performance.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's, you know, the only reason for me to sing a song, I wouldn't ever do it for my sort of, you know, so I've got my sort of ego fulfilling song on an album or whatever. I don't care about that at all. I think the only reason would be if, like, for some reason Tom was singing a song and it just didn't sound as good as when I sung it, which is not inconceivable. You know, he's a much better singer, but there might be something that he just couldn't sort of get to the heart of or whatever, or you know, maybe one of the other guys would sing it better. I don't know, but it seems unlikely, and I don't think we've really come across that yet. But yeah, I doubt it. It's just, you know, when you hear Tom sing a song really well, it just sort of makes it, just opens it up and makes it sound amazing.
Maha from New York says, is the collaboration with Kanye West ever going to happen? Or I guess see the light of day, as you did have a collaboration already.
Yeah, I don't know. The one that we did with him, I've got a feeling will, you know, if anyone ever, you know, if people still care about Keane in 30 years' time, maybe we'll do a Beatles-style anthology. But that, you know, it was basically an experiment that was kind of okay, but not amazing. I think it was what we both felt. But I mean, we would love to do more stuff with him. But you know, he's sort of the busiest man in music, really. So we'll see.
Violet Roses asks, are you still in touch with Chris Martin? Have you thought about how different your life would be if you'd accepted his offer to play the piano in Coldplay?
I never know how to take that question.
It's quite an odd thing that you could have been a member of a different, incredibly successful band.
Yeah. I think, well, the thing is, for a start, it wasn't that I didn't accept his offer. It was just that the offer sort of evaporated, really. You know, I think we just decided they were happy with the four of them. But which, you know, obviously was probably a pretty good decision from the looks of it. But I, you know, if they had really wanted me to join, I had joined. Yeah, it would have been weird, wouldn't it? I think I would have really enjoyed it, but I probably would have been a bit frustrated if I hadn't been able to be a songwriter. But then I'd probably it'd be quite nice not to have that responsibility. But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it?
I mean, it's not like you're Pete Best or someone who...
No, I'm happy with my meagre lot in life.
Exactly, you've done all right.
Yeah.
And are you still in touch with him?
I haven't spoken to him for a while, but not for any reason. I haven't seen him for ages, actually. I'm trying to think what else.
Didn't they come and see you in New York on Perfect Symmetry Tour?
Maybe. I get very confused. But anyway, yeah. But I mean, yeah, they're great on me. Yeah, I don't know. Give them a call.
Give him a shout.
You know.
Echo Han says, this is also Erin from Colorado, we'll be in London in July. What are some things that she should see while she's there? Any suggestions?
Well, one of my favourite things, well, lots of things I love about London. I think walking along the river is really nice, along the South Bank, particularly. I love driving around London in the night. My favourite sort of tourist attraction is the Museum of London, which has just been reopened after lots of rejigging, and that's really amazing. Especially if you're into, well, I think it'd be amazing for anyone, but it's the kind of social history of London is so amazing and powerful. You know, it's really, they've done it in a way that you really could get quite sort of emotionally involved with, you know, with the history, which I think is a very difficult thing to do. So, you know, yeah, it makes you see the people who lived in London 400 years ago as real people, and you feel their sort of their pain and so on, which I think is a really great achievement for a museum.
Absolutely. Penultimate question now from FMBM. What do you do when you have writer's block to inspire yourself, like when nothing comes to mind?
Writer's block is really annoying and depressing. It really gets me down. I don't know if I found a convincing way through it, apart from just to keep working. I think the worst thing you can do is sort of avoid the issue. You just got to keep going, and I find that sort of I actually find it easier to write generally if I'm on the move. I found that when I start walking, my brain starts working much better, which is very odd. I don't know what that means, but the other thing I like doing is this thing where you try and write 20 songs in a day, which I got from a book about this. Well, it was, yeah, these guys in Australia, I think, or maybe it's America, had this idea about trying to get through writer's block, where forcing themselves to write, and you have to do like a 12-hour block of non-stop writing. Oh. And I've done that a few times with Jesse. The first time we did it, it was me and Jesse and Justin, who's now the lead singer of the Vaccines. Even though, yeah, I was JJ Pistol at the time, or between jobs anyway. But yeah, that's an amazing process where you end up. Yeah, I've never managed to do 20 in 12 hours, but I've managed to do sort of 13, 14.
Any good ones come out of that?
Yeah. You'll sort of end up with. I think the best one for me, I sort of probably end up with like 4 or 5 sort of really good ideas from 12 songs or something. So yeah, it's a really worthwhile process, and it also just forces you to use your brain, and you sort of get to the end of the day and think, oh yeah, I can actually write songs rather than just sitting there sort of twiddling your thumbs and thinking, oh, I'm never going to write a good song again. You just got to get on with it, but it's a bit of a blight for songwriters.
Final question then is from Luciana Brazil from the Frog Prince Squad, who says, "My dear Tim, you should have lots of songs ready for the new album. Can you tell us how many songs you think will be on the next album, and if possible, can you name one song?"
I love that. You should have lots of songs ready.
Yeah.
You're right, I should. By now. I don't know if I want to name any because I've written a lot. I think we've got about, I don't know, 25 something that are probably a bit more than that actually, maybe 30 that are kind of have been serious sort of contenders for, you know, that have been kind of contenders that we've discussed, and we've kind of narrowed that down to about 17 or something, I think. And then we're still trying to narrow it down. That's kind of what we're doing at the moment. We're playing all the songs together and trying to hone them, and I'm really, really excited about them. I think we've got all the songs. I think I'm going to I'll keep writing while we're rehearsing, sort of between gaps, during gaps rather. But yeah, I think we're there. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to name anything yet because I don't know if we're not quite decided what's staying and what's going.
Cool. Well, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.